I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you, the love that will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You called me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
Open season!
How do we know she is alive?
Say, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to. Please stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop
Hey guys, we got a very special episode here for the 1982 horror movies. I'm with Bo Ransdell. He is the guy who runs Legion podcast. He has his own podcast, The Dark Parade, and he writes films, Lost After Dark, the kind of newish kind of throwback to slasher films. So how's it going, Bo?
It's going great. It's good to be here. Although I have one slight correction. I don't actually run Legion anymore. That's actually another guy who took it over. I ran it for a long time. And then I stepped down and he took over so that I could just do more podcast stuff, which is kind of what I wanted to do in the beginning anyway.
I thought
go ahead.
Came back. Sorry, my bad. You go ahead.
Yeah, kind of. Well, like I'm always halfway between a hiatus because it's just a situation where just real life gets busy, as is the nature of my job. And so there are times where I have these like great spurts of productivity, and I'm hoping that in a Dan Carlin hardcore history-esque kind of way that people will just be like, all right, I'll stay subscribed, and then like I'm gonna get 12 episodes in 3 weeks, and then nothing for 2 months, which tends to be my pace.
That makes sense.
It's real manic. If you gave a psychologist 10 minutes, I'm sure they could find something there.
Oh, there's always something there. There's always something there, right under the surface. But just consider them seasons. You got 12 episodes on, 12 weeks on, 12 weeks off. That's how you keep them hooked. You know what I mean?
Right. Leave them wanting more. That's my motto.
Exactly.
Well, actually, it tends to be like, let's just give them so much that they're like, enough already. And then just like enough time has passed, they're like, oh, okay, I can do some of this again.
I'm the consistent. I constantly feed them like a bad buffet, but it's always there. It's quantity over quality. I just like, how many movies you watch this year? 7 out of how many you remember? 2. And I already seen them before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's the Good Place line about that? You make something a little bit worse so you can have a whole lot more of it. In reference to yogurt. You are doing it the smart way. I'm doing it the way where I'm just like, I am pushing listeners away.
I've wasted my life on movies, but there's a lot worse ways to. It's better than heroin.
Yeah. All right. But here's the thing. And even though my productivity wanes, my movie watching doesn't. Like I'm always watching movies. It's just a question of, do I have time to sit down and record something and edit something and get it out there and, try to kind of half-ass promote it some kind of way. That's the heavy lift. The movies I continue to watch, like I've really been on a kick lately of movies that I just haven't seen in like 15 years, regardless of the movie. And so it's led me to watch things like I watched Airplane last night, which I hadn't seen in forever. And
movie.
A tremendous movie. But alternately, I watched PCU, which is not that great a movie, but I had seen it forever.
Is that the one with Jeremy Piven?
It is the one with Jeremy Piven.
Yeah. That's a movie that you only watch on TV ever. Nobody ever rented that movie. It just came on TV and I saw it.
Right. It was on Comedy Central or TBS or something. And then I rewatched it like as a legitimate movie. And in that context, I'm like, this isn't really that funny. And
it's like Weekend at Bernie's. It's like if you catch it on TV, you watch it. If you rent it, you don't even finish it.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works.
I found myself renting a few. Well, not obviously in the old. Anyway, I could go down a path of like the joys of renting movies that would derail us all.
I have a whole room dedicated to it in this house, and I just look at it sometimes.
Yes, like you posted pictures of that, right? Like, it looks amazing, man. I like it in a lot of ways. You're kind of who I want to be when I grow up. As far, like every time I look at my basement, I'm like, I should turn this into a Blockbuster.
For sure, but just a mom and pop video shop, so you can have like really bad SOVs in there too.
Yeah. There was I can never remember it was something called like Legitimate Video or like Broadside Video, like a real weird name for a video place across from the college I went to, but it was that kind of mom and pop hole in the wall place that had like, hey, we've got Caligula, if you need to see Caligula, we got you covered, that kind of thing. So a lot of really weird obscure stuff. We had 3 copies of Eaten Alive, just in case.
Which one? The Hooper or
Yeah, the
Burt
Hooper,
Lenzi? You don't
yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But weirdly, the remake of Toolbox Murders.
But not the original.
Not the original. Who's to say?
Who knows what's going on? My video store had Troll 1, but no Troll 2. But they had the box for Troll 2. And then when I finally tracked that bad boy down, think of my disappointment at 10 years old.
So we're tracking it down to see which one, the original Troll or Troll 2?
2.
Okay, yeah, Troll 2. Troll 2 is funny as a concept, but it's a rough sit. It's a tough movie to watch.
It's funny for somebody that's watched 10 million movies. It's not funny for like a kid who rented it and then it's just like.
Yeah, was that one of your first movies where you're like, oh, movies can be bad?
Besides the ones that were like such poorly like VHSs that were so murky and dark that you were just like, I can't see what's going on. Thank you very much. Like 1960, like you're watching like some crappy movie like Loch Ness Horror. You're like, is there a movie here?
Right. I hear one. It sounds like one is happening. I just can't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we should tell them what we're reviewing or talking about. We're talking about Poltergeist.
Man, what a banger! Just a straight up banger of a movie.
Oh yeah. And I've had a long relationship with this movie. I'm sure you have too. This is a movie that, it's the one that you're like, when you start getting into horror movies, your parents are going to let you rent Poltergeist because they know it's a good movie, and Spielberg, he produced it. He can get away with anything. Spielberg could make a snuff film and somehow your parents would let you rent it. They'd be like, it's all right. He's killing bad people though. They had it coming. But,
and the lighting would be great, and John Williams would make an amazing score for it. It would be the platonic ideal of a snuff film for sure.
But what happened after, as I got older, I think that I just got to this jaded part where I was a little iffy on Poltergeist because all the movies that ripped it off were so generic and they didn't have any of the nuances that Poltergeist had. So I was like, I don't even love this anymore. So then when I went back to rewatch it, and like 4 years ago, I was like, I respect the shit out of it, but I don't love it like I did as a kid. This time, I came full circle, and I was like, you know what? I'm back to where I was as a kid. I think I matured enough to turn back into a child, and I'm digging Poltergeist again. I get it. I get that, like, maybe I'm just not as jaded or like, somebody didn't get killed in this. You know what I mean?
Right. Low body count on Poltergeist, unless you count, all the people that were buried there before, but... and I think the interesting thing about this viewing for me is, as I was saying, I kind of viewed it through adult eyes in a way that I hadn't really before, just as an adult, and been just long enough that I really had some distance, I think. And what I realized is, even though, as you said, this is one of those movies, or at least when I was a kid, parents were cool with you watching because it was a PG horror movie and Spielberg and yada yada. But it's not a movie. Like, the kids are not the focus of the movie. Yeah. Even though Carol Ann has gone missing, the movie is the story of parents who are helpless to save their child, and seeing it through that prism, it really made me appreciate it more. Like, oh yeah, because there's a point at whether one of the kids is trapped in the house or the others just get sent away, that it's like, oh no, we're just with the parents at this point, and it's really their struggle and their story, and it's something that I just had not given proper consideration to, and now that I have, I'm like, oh, it really is this kind of wonderful story of a couple trying to figure out what to do when the world goes completely wrong,
and they show them before. They establish them really, really well. And what made me also appreciate this a little bit more was I finally took the dive on the remake. And I knew it was going to suck. And it fucking sucked. And
it's bad.
Instead of introducing, two solid parents that have some nuances to them, they have the white picket fence facade, but they're not 100% that facade, right? Because you see stuff that really your parents would do. Maybe your parents would have smoke a little joint. Maybe they goof around in their bed and wrestle. Like, I remember doing that with, people, significant others, right? You're just like goofing around, wrestling, fighting on the bed. You're in your 30s, but you feel like a kid at sometimes. And I felt, just watching that stuff, I was like, this feels real. This feels like suburbia. And that's something the remake does not have. It does not establish them as humans with great interactions. When you see the remake, Sam Rockwell, God bless his heart, he does a pretty good job, but he comes into that movie a broken man. And Sam Rockwell's a desperate actor. You know, he's like a Jack Nicholson. Like, they make the joke that he always seems desperate. You know, he's always got something going on. He's like your grandpa on vacation with a bunch of screaming kids. He wants out of here. He wants out of this. He needs something to break. Craig T. Nelson and JoBeth Williams do not seem that way. They seem happy. There's chaos around, which is suburbia family life. It's chaos. You know, the kids are throwing syrup everywhere. But yeah, I think that watching them crack and being like crazy, I mean, unlike The Shining, right? Which is like, I love that movie, but King's main complaint was that Torrance is crazy from the beginning when he shouldn't be. In that movie. But these people are settled, they're established, and also I like the idea that it's not some cornball thing where directly they move into the house, right? We're moving to the house, and it's haunted. Of course it's haunted. No, he helped build this fucking house. He's responsible for this house. He sold it to other people. He just found out about it, and they've been in the house for a number of times. And that's how, if you believe in hauntings or poltergeist activity, that's usually how it works. Why did it come? Whatever, nobody knows.
Yeah. Why now? Yeah, that question is really interesting. You know, touching on that scene that you're kind of alluding to there, the one where they're just kind of hanging out in the bedroom. Apologies for the dog. When they're just kind of hanging out in the bedroom, and you get, you know, like you said, they're kind of smoking the joint, and they're just being a couple, you know, like away from the kids. Like when the kid finally comes in, they're like, oh, I got to be a parent again. They're like, JoBeth Williams is perfect in that moment, as she kind of stubs out the joint but doesn't call attention to it, and you know, it's very motherly. Like, oh, honey, what's going on? You know, nothing's going on in here. But kind of seeing their dynamic, their relationship, it's just like you buy them not only as a couple, but also you understand, like, Craig T. Nelson is reading the Reagan biography. Yeah. And it's like, oh, he's like, this is a former hippie couple moving into the yuppiedom of middle age. And like, he's reading the Reagan biography. She's a little more hippy dippy than he is still, but he's sold out and bought in, which isn't wrong. You know, like, this is just the way that he's grown up. But there's all these little details like that kind of fill in these characters in a way that the remake certainly does not. And as you said, like, that Sam Rockwell character, he's just such a sad sack that you're like, man, this is miserable. Like, these people are just unhappy, and there's nothing interesting about watching a movie about people who are going from miserable to more miserable. Yeah, they're getting preyed upon already. And the movie In Fabric was like that. And I know, like, it was a movie that's good. I know it's good, but I certainly did not enjoy watching it because I'm like, it's just preying upon these sad people. And it's like, I don't want to see this middle-aged lady who's already got a shitty life be killed by a dress. What the fuck are we doing? And I normally like that. It's somehow, tonally, it got me annoyed. I was just like, this is just misery porn. What's the movie with Casey Affleck? Where it's like brother dies in a fire. Oh God, that is by the Sea. That's so depressing. Oh yeah. I've never seen it because I knew what the end was, and everyone was like, "Dude, it's just so miserable." And I was like, "Got it, fine. I don't need to see that. I'm good. I'm sure it's great, but I don't need to see that." But I'll watch Cannibal Holocaust 500 times because it's a different kind of misery. It's like condemning the human race on a level, but the individualism of it all in those movies, it's more bothersome sometimes. And it's not children, right? Like, that's the other thing, is there aren't children involved with Cannibal Holocaust. There's just a turtle, and that upsets me plenty. It sucks. It sucks. But it is interesting. But so, like, you know, going back to the 82 version, seeing that couple be in love, you know, they're making each other laugh, and they're about, like, if the kid didn't walk in, that was about to be. They're getting down. They're working on Caroline's little sister. Carolyn's little sister. Like, he's making Donald Duck noises. She's getting turned on by it. It's a really fun couple kind of thing, because it's also, even that is joyful, and that's one of the things about this movie I really like, is a good portion of the front end of this movie, even when the supernatural stuff starts, is really kind of joyful and wondrous, and, you know, more like, isn't this amazing? What a cool thing this is. And that's one of the things I like most about Poltergeist is that sense of like, oh, not the cliche of like, well, if it really happened. But kind of if it really happened, then at first, like once you realize that you weren't in immediate danger from something,
You'd be fucking around.
right? You would be drawing the things on the floor and letting the chair slide across, and like that stuff. And my God, is this movie helped by the John Williams score? But those
it's Jerry Goldsmith.
Oh, Jerry Goldsmith. Sorry. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, Goldsmith. Williams and Goldsmith are both masters. The score, it matches the tone of the movie perfectly. It got that scariness, but then it has that kind of sweet, kind of Spielberg touch to it, which is where he lives. He lives in that fantasy world. And if you watch the making of, Spielberg says he believes this shit, and that's how you got to be. Just like William Friedkin believed that shit. I don't think William Friedkin's a religious nut, but he most certainly believed that kid got possessed. And I think Spielberg he believed this stuff. He's a big kid. Hearing interviews with him, he believed that. He's like, these are how possessions poltergeists work. I'm like, in the making of, I'm like, what the fuck? But if they made that movie nowadays and I see the Warrens, I'm like puking in my guts out. I'm like, this is some bullshit. Like, because I don't know, these movies don't tend to come at you. Amityville 4, Poltergeist, Exorcist. I never felt like even The Omen or Rosemary's Baby, I never felt like they were shall I say, religious propaganda. And although, I mean, they have like I don't know. These are like, if they are Christians, they seem like good Christians, to be honest, to me. Like, not the bullshit hellfire you're going to die for. They just don't seem like propaganda to me. They seem like just movies with a good story.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between being, like, The Exorcist is a movie about a little girl suffering from this, the illness. Like, maybe smart people may have said, like, a mother watching a daughter and being helpless to help her and blah blah blah, and so that's what that movie is really about, as opposed to the kind of that kind of schlock that religious film production companies will churn out that are just overtly like the message is the movie, as opposed to this is a movie about people who happen to be Catholic or
they're good stories in those. Like The Exorcist, it is about a man who's losing his faith because his mother died. Yeah. And that's a great story. I can relate to that. Anybody can relate to that, I mean, I don't want to get all like religious in here, but I think at one point in everybody's life, there's one point where they are religious or not. It doesn't matter when. I think that they can understand a certain aspect of that. And I think The Exorcist points to that with the father. Is it Karen or Karras?
Karras. Yeah,
Karras. I love Karras.
It's so good.
I want to point out something you said, which makes me laugh. You said that they're old ex-hippies and they're reading the Reagan book. That is such a Tobe Hooper thing, because Tobe Hooper is an ex-hippie. He's like, hey man, we're going to direct this movie and we're going to, he's like that. And he's reading the Reagan book. It's just like, it's almost himself in that movie selling out to make this Spielberg movie. It's like Hooper himself is Craig T. Nelson selling out.
Yeah, it's Hooper going to the suburbs, and it's sort of like Iggy Pop playing a wedding. That it's that kind of like raw animal energy of Hooper's best movies. Speaking of eating alive,
I love that one.
Right? It's bonkers, but that's what makes it so great. So it's that kind of energy, and there's all the debate surrounding like who really directed Poltergeist. Is it Hooper? Is it Spielberg? Yada yada. I don't think there's an argument that convinces me that this isn't a Tobe Hooper movie, but it's just got a lot of Spielberg, polish to it.
He wrote it, he produced it, he called in a lot of the favors, all that kind of stuff like that. I would say, but doesn't Goonies feel like Spielberg a little bit too?
Yeah, and
Gremlins, a little bit, just a little.
And conversely, there are things in Poltergeist that feel very Hooper. I don't think those corpses are nearly as gnarly if it's not Hooper saying, no, it needs to look real, and being that guy, and like, no, she needs to fall back in, that's the Hooper kind of meanness to Poltergeist. And Poltergeist is kind of a mean movie. it does not make any bones about the fact that it's trying to mess with you. And like the scene I always think of in that regard is the guy pulling his face off in the mirror. Like when I saw that as a kid, and obviously looking at it now, it's like, oh, the effects are, it is what it is.
It's like Ghostbusters fun, but
right. But the intended effect of that scene is to terrify you. It is not like, it's not played for jokes. It is like, look at this guy, you know, the body horror part of like he's bleeding and starts picking at it, and before the scene is up, he's going to be a skull with hunks of, you know, face hanging off of it.
It's beautiful.
It's fantastic. And then that quick flash where he's okay again, and that to me, as I said, that's the Hooper brand. Like I don't know that Spielberg has that in him.
I know the Melting Nazis is similar, but it's not done in that aspect, right?
Well, and that's the villain, you know?
Yeah. Not
that's the
some
villain getting... Yeah.
The one thing, too, I noticed, which I love old movies because they don't have to tell you absolutely everything. They just show you. And this guy has, you know, he looks like he had some pock marks and bad skin. So it looked like he'd been picking at his face before. I guarantee they do not do that to a guy with clean skin. They hired a guy like Andrew Divoff or something, or Bill Murray, who had a couple pock marks on his face, and Morgan Freeman, because he'd been picking at it. So I bet that like just childhood trauma of it. I mean, I'm not digging too deep, but I really think so. And another thing I think about Hooper, which I just kind of had a revelation. I've heard a lot of people talk about Hooper, so I'm probably lifting it from somebody if I did. But when you have Texas Chainsaw and Eaten Alive, you have the civilized society going into the horror. They go into Texas Chainsaw, they go into the Starlight Motel, and Funhouse even. It's very suburban in the first half of Funhouse. I love Funhouse. Rewatched that for 81, had not seen it in years, holds up. And but he still had to have that carny life. So the carnival's moving, and they're moving their world, and the suburbs go in their world. Now, the horror is coming into the suburbs. It's coming into the civilized world. So it's a little different.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, I mean, looking down the road at his stuff, in a lot of ways, Life Force is kind of like that too, and just a global scale of disaster comes to the innocent. But the
Lost Quatermass movie, Life Force.
Man, it's I have so much love for that movie. It's a real mess, but I love that movie.
I like it a lot too.
Yes, that's what it is. It's really fun and really silly, and I love it. Where else are you going to see, you know, Patrick Stewart as a space vampire?
Yeah, and doesn't he make out with Steve Railsback?
Yeah, sure does.
The make out nobody was asking for. It's just the two people I never like. Steve Railsback is the weirdest actor in the world. Sometimes I'm like, what is this maniac doing? And then at times like, he's really good in this. You never know what you're getting.
Yeah, sometimes you get a Plaguers, and sometimes the other thing happens. But yeah, I do. The idea of Patrick Stewart making out with him is funny. Number one, we're getting to second base.
Also, that's a number one thing when people are like, Hooper can't direct that big. Hooper can't make this movie. I'm like, well, he does a small town suburban feel pretty well in Salem's Lot. He does it in Poltergeist, and he does the big crazy action like he does in Life Force and Poltergeist 2. And I'm not, you know what? This is probably like a co-production of Hooper and Spielberg, right?
Yes.
But I mean, how much do Bruckheimer and Don Simpson put influence on Michael Bay early on? A lot.
Yeah, well, you know, True Romance is a Tarantino movie as filtered through Tony Scott.
Yeah.
Just like Poltergeist is a very Steven Spielberg kind of movie as filtered through Tobe Hooper. And I you know, it's two great tastes that taste great together. They really complement each other well. Both the sense of wonder that Spielberg brings to it, and that kind of antagonism, and that desire to kind of, you know, put his thumb in the eye of the viewer that Hooper has, of like, you know, how do I get under your skin? It's a tremendous balance. And it's tough to strike, and I don't know that there's... I can't think of a movie that quite has the tone of Poltergeist in that respect.
Me either. Not quite. Not something that has the mainstream appeal either.
Right, like the closest I can think of is weirdly The Gate.
Same thing I was going to say, I swear to God.
Yeah, but that is a little too... That leans a little too heavy towards the horror part of it.
I don't think it's as approachable either as Poltergeist.
Yeah, and it has a real grim kind of finale that this one doesn't come near in terms of just like total nihilism. And because Poltergeist is not ultimately a nihilistic movie, it's very much about like, you know, no matter what you throw at this family, they are going to survive it and overcome it. Which is good for me because I think maybe just at my age, I'm like, I just don't like a movie that ends as a total bummer without earning it. And there are lots of movies that try to get away with that, you know. But yeah, tonally, it is that interesting blend. You know, much like a horror comedy, it's a tough mixture to get right. Whereas this one is more like, well, how do you do that Amblin family, you know, like joyful kind of entertainment alongside something that is genuinely scary.
But you also got to let people get their guard down, right? They got to love this family. They got to kind of put their guard down and relate to them. And then, boom, you hit them with the scares. And this movie's really good at that. Like I said, also, too, with a comedy, a lot of comedies will tear at your heartstrings more than other films because they can make you laugh, they can make you cry. I don't know why, but they're directly connected. I mean, sometimes you laugh so hard you cry. So, I mean, if a movie can get you to enjoy the characters and get your guard down and relax, it can also scare you. This movie's really good at setting everything up, right? From the TV clicker with the argument back and forth with the neighbor, which is very funny, to the lightning, how it does that. And they give you enough time and he counts, boom, scary. The tree, the clown, the omen of the bird, all that stuff is just set up so perfectly that it just all happens and it doesn't seem like there's a balance. And a lot of movies do not get it right, where they're like, they basically look at the camera and wink at you, and then you're like, oh, so we know this is coming, right? Yeah. Like they'll just say really good. like don't be a menace. Message, and then you know what I mean? Like, yeah, and these are really well done to the fact where you're like, oh, they're putting it in there, but it doesn't seem so obvious. Yeah,
and I can't believe I didn't even start by saying how much I love the opening moments of this movie, because the economy of storytelling is something that it makes me unduly excited when a movie can do just what you're saying of like, how do I show you something in a very quick way? And that opening scene is, you've got the dog, you see the TV, they're all in the living room, you see the dad, you follow the dog up, you see the entire geography of the house, you meet every member of the family, and not a word is spoken. They're all just asleep in one form or another. And immediately you're like, oh, okay, I get it. This is a, 2-car, 2.5-child family in suburbia. This looks like a wonderful house. They seem like nice people. And they've got, look at this dog, E-Buzz, one of the cinema's great dogs. And, but it immediately, though, it takes that turn where it opens with death. Like the parakeet does. Tweety goes in like the second or third scene of the movie, letting you know that yes, we are going to upset this wonderful life that you're seeing unfold before your eyes. And the first step in that is like, hey, we're going to kill something. You're going to see it buried in the yard.
But we get a goldfish out of it.
Yeah, the immediate turn of, can I have a goldfish now? They're
very cute, very funny.
Oh, it's adorable.
Very childlike too, of course. You know what I mean? You're sad, but then you're like, I can get something out of this.
Her whole like, I'm gonna put the, so he doesn't get cold, and so he's not lonely, like all that stuff, and it's so sweet, and yeah, and it lands on that punchline so good. It's so well written. Like, to say this script is well written is an understatement to an nth degree. It's an incredible screenplay.
How hard this movie script, it's so funny because you say story and you'd be like, well, Poltergeist story is amazing, the first one, and then because it's a script, it's not even the story is kind of basic. The script is wonderful though, and the nuances, and I'm telling you, the nuances really make a movie, the small details, and he has a lot of attention to detail. Because you take the remake, it's the same story, they change some details, they recreate all the scenes they think you want to see, and they do them poorly, and they leave out all the scenes you really want to see completely.
Yeah.
So the nuances in this script, Heather O'Rourke, she's so good. Everybody's so good in this movie, but her line delivery, they're here, who would say it like that? That's such a smart idea.
that delivery is, I mean, iconic, of course, but I really like her line delivery. Like when they first see the chair stacked up in the living room, and JoBeth Williams says, like, you know, do you see them? And she's like, do you? And it's a real nice term where she's like, no, I don't see them either, but you're the one staring at the TV, weirdo. Yeah, it like all of the performances. Heather O'Rourke is really wonderful, and they make her act like a kid. She's not one of those grown-ups in a little kid body.
Yeah.
She's just a kid, and she's wonderful. Just like Robbie he's just a kid, you know, who's scared of stuff in his bedroom and the tree outside and all that stuff, and all of that stuff just feels authentic. You know, it feels like people you know or people you could know. And again, it sounds easy, but it's really tough. Yeah. When you talk about nuances, one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when, after like the first thing happens with the chair, they go to the neighbor and they're standing on his porch smacking bugs off their neck, and half hysterical because of what's going on when they're like, you know, what's his name, Ted or whatever, when they're just
something.
Like, yeah.
Mr. something, and then they're like Bob or something, Bob, and he starts laughing.
And they both just giggle. It's so good, man. And it's that little touch. It makes it all feel real, and like the neighbor doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, but they're just giddy and kind of high on this experience. It's so fun.
His kid was one step away from wearing a little propeller hat, though.
Yeah.
He was like, they ever bite you? He's like, I don't know. About the mosquito? I don't know. Like, you don't even know. That's how most people are. They're like,
Do you think, this was my thought watching it, especially speaking of Robbie, looking at his room and all the Star Wars stuff, and just knowing the nature of Spielberg's relationship with Lucas, do you think he called him ahead of time and was like, you know, hey, I'm going to throw a bunch of Star Wars stuff?
Didn't Lucas, the Lucas effects team, do the effects in Poltergeist? I think they did.
Yeah,
so, I mean, they probably threw all that shit in there, honestly. I remember hearing that. Because I was watching the special features on the Blu-ray 4K, and they're all on the Blu-ray, but 4K is amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
And the sound is so good in Poltergeist.
Yes.
Sound. But I was watching the special features, and they have these two really crummy Paranormal Activity Blu-ray, like these paranormal like investigator stuff, and they're trash. They're like really bad, and like there's at one point there's like and they have nothing to do with Poltergeist, and there's just a guy like who's a rock climber, and he's like, you know, there's got to be like a spirit there or something to carry me over the mountains, and I'm like, what is this? Like every time I watch this garbage now, I swear to God, I feel like a teacher, and I feel like I'm writing on the paper like, what is this doing in here? This is not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not relevant. This is not relevant.
Your evidence doesn't match your thesis.
Yeah, like just take this out. This does not belong. Like a kid who wants to write an essay about Power Rangers, but he starts talking about Masters of the Universe. You have to circle it like non-relevant.
Yeah.
Pad in this paper, but everything was non-relevant, and then the making of was real short but really good. And I think they mentioned the Lucas team working on that stuff, and I didn't know Lucas had his own special effects thing, but it makes sense, you know.
Sure.
Spielberg and Lucas were juggernauts at the time. Another nuance is, I mean, who would pick instead of the remake? I keep comparing it to the remake because watching the remake made me appreciate the original. I was at like 8, and then I went and watched the remake, and I went back and I bumped Poltergeist up to a 9. Like, I didn't register what I didn't realize how good I had it, and I didn't, you know what I mean? Like watching something that doesn't have anything, I'm just like, what the fuck? No, this is, and so I was watching it, and I was like, I love how all the people interact with the neighborhood. That's true suburbia. When I was growing up, everybody interacted, the neighbors talked, they knew each other, and the neighborhood is kind of its own entity. The remake, it's not there. Nobody interacts with anybody. But just them watching the football game, them talking to the neighbors, arguing. The guy riding the fucking bicycle in the beginning with the beers, and that's the guy from Prince of Darkness, isn't it? Mm-hmm. He's one of the guys. He's also in Night of the Scarecrow. He always dies in every movie he's in. But he drops the beers. And he runs in there in his sweatpants. The beer's spilling all over the place. That part just cracks me up. It's just such a bizarre little scene in there that's just I love.
And it's one of my favorite moments in the Goldsmith score too. Yeah. It's a really great piece of music that goes along. It's this very like happy orchestral piece as this guy, like the remote control car stuff, and then the kids like trying to get him to spill the beer, all of that stuff. Well, as you said, it's just all these little human touches to set up the neighborhood, and that this is just good old fashioned Americana, you know, and which is a great setup to then explode all of that with, you know, and even with, you know, we've touched on this already, but even when the supernatural stuff starts, it's very like, you know, innocuous and kind of exciting. And it really takes a turn. Like the movie does a great job of kind of leaning into, look how much fun everybody in the family is having with this, and now we're going to make a hard left into, you know, Robbie's getting eaten by a tree and Carol Ann's going into the closet, you know.
But again, even the Poltergeist gets their guard down. Like if you ever watch the documentary about child predators, they gain the trust of the family, then they snatch the kid.
Yeah.
What was that terrible show about I don't remember. It was the stupid thing with the relief guy. Remember they were making the joke when you need relief and it shows him. They like, this guy infiltrated their family. He was like a religious guy, and then he took the daughter. Right. You know, that's just the story of Poltergeist.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, you're totally right. Like the Poltergeist has been grooming Carol Ann. And I love those scenes where she's talking to the TV, or, you know, and you just hear the one side of the conversation. Yeah. But especially once you've seen it and know what's coming, you have to watch those scenes as if like, oh, this is whatever this ghost is asking her, or the demon. It's, I mean, they're grooming style questions, like, how old are you, and, you know, who else is there with you, and all of that stuff.
For sure.
It's
figuring it all out. You know, the suburban feel, I mean, I would compare another director. I always thought Suburbia when I thought of this horror director, and that's Wes Craven, big time. And I think Nightmare on Elm Street has it. And The Burbs, I think that the fun in the beginning, that little cross, tripping that guy up, the whole movie The Burbs is just that.
Yeah.
that whole scene in the beginning.
Man, that's another one for my list. I haven't seen The Burbs in so long. Yeah, I need to go back to it. And, I mean, Neighbors, the old Belushi movie.
Oh, yeah, that's a bizarre film. Zach Wright as the Nazi.
Yes, super weird, but another, like, hey, the normal family in suburbia. I don't know that I would recommend Neighbors. Neighbors is a weird film.
It's a cult movie. I mean, if you watch a lot of movies, give it a spin. I'm not,
yeah.
You know?
It's different. If you like, right, this is one of those things of like, if you've watched a lot of movies and want something that's real offbeat, it's not quite as like ribald as like a John Waters thing, but not quite as funny even.
Definitely not as funny as John. John Waters movies get me in tears. But what's the one that got me in? Polyester. That's the one from 81. That had me in tears. That had me. Yeah. But I want to kind of talk a little bit about the paranormal investigators. And when they come in, you know, like, I think the movie before this, the Amityville Horror, shares a little bit of DNA, and Legend of Hell House. Those are the two where they have the paranormal investigator. But these guys are a little different. And my main takeaway, besides obviously Zelda Rubinstein, icon here, is the main paranormal lady. Her connection with JoBeth Williams seems so genuine, and there's like a lot of love between them, and it really added a lot to both those characters. It was just these moments, these little tiny moments you give your actors so they actually feel like, you know, they're not wasting their fucking time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, give characters moments, and you get things like the scene, like when Robbie's sleeping and they're just talking, like in that whispered tone, and JoBeth Williams is apologizing for, like, you know, I'm so sorry that everything's so crazy, and she says, no, we should be apologizing to you, like, you nice people have let us, and it's it's almost a maternal connection between them, you know, because of the age, I think, and like all of the especially that relationship is really wonderful. The Zelda Rubinstein thing is really fun. I mean, she just kind of drops in out of nowhere. But like as you mentioned, Legend of Hell House, I love a movie where people go investigate a haunted house. I blame that as much as anything on my enjoyment of found footage movies. Yeah. Because so many of them are that, and most of them are terrible. But I can't help it. I really like that premise. And this is one of the best uses of it because they are real characters, and the guy who pulls off his face. I like the moment where she's like, "Look, we'll be back tomorrow." He's not coming back.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, he's had it. He's sorry about that. Yeah, I really like that kind of movie, just like Legend of Hell House. One of my all-timers in terms of haunted house films and horror movies in general. I love a good Roddy McDowall performance.
I love Roddy McDowall. Underrated actor. Just rewatched Class A in 1984, which is one of my favorites. Like, I know it's not a perfect movie, but like, you ever rate something a 5 and you're like, this ain't a 5, but it is to me. It is to me, and that's the one. I know it's not a 5. It's to me. Yeah. That's a Class 94 at that.
I think that's the only legitimate way to rate a movie, is be like, this is me. I am telling you that for me, this is a 5-star movie. Yeah, and if you trust my opinion, you might also find this to be at least a solid 4.
Like, Poltergeist is a 5. I rated it a 4.5. I mean, but it's a 5. You know what I mean? Like, if you're arguing for your personal favorites or arguing for something else, like, one, you can't change my mind on my personal favorites. Yeah. But like, best, I do see sometimes the movie's really good, better than I'm, rating it even sometimes.
Oh, for sure. I've told you about watching Airplane. Like, that, to me, that is a perfect film. There are plenty of things wrong with Airplane. It's, it's super cheap, and some of the jokes have not aged particularly well. But I'm never not going to love Airplane. It's never not going to make me laugh. And similarly, like, Poltergeist is one of those movies. There are plenty of people. When we do the summer series with Duncan, there's inevitably, when Poltergeist comes up, there are detractors, there are naysayers for Poltergeist. I tend to think that is wrong. Well,
I might have been a naysayer a couple years ago, but I finally seen the light. I didn't walk into it though, but I've seen it. I've seen the light.
You cannot walk into it. We'll get to the back end of this. Before we jump from the paranormal investigators, though, I do want to say I love the fact that they're all freaked out but game is kind of their vibe. There's that great moment where the guys talk about, like, oh, this roller skate moved 3 feet over 7 hours. When they're 6 meters or 6 inches over 6 hours. They're all like, shut up, bro. When he's open the door. It took 6 hours for what? For the skate to move 6 meters. Oh. And like his dismissive, like,
completely disgusting.
Okay. Right, and then now I'm gonna open this door on just chaos.
Yeah, you got Hulk on the little horse look over and everything. That was stuck in my head for some reason. That like was living rent free, the little Hulk on there. But I imagine him even more so moving.
Yeah, for me, it's the compass on the record.
That's like, really cool though.
It's just there are movies where the creators are smart and clever enough to use the premise in really fun ways. And if you're going to do a haunted house movie in which one of the rooms is very haunted, opening the door to just pure, like a tornado of just crazy nonsense is kind of a fun way to show that, and it's visually interesting. Like, this movie never stops moving, whether it's the camera or the story or whatever. Like, it's, almost 2 hours long, and it just trucks, man. This movie, like, once you get started, even though there are these quiet little character moments along the way, they're just these little valleys in between, like, giant plot points and big set pieces. It really does a fantastic job of carrying you not just through that beginning, but once you introduce those investigators, it's like, okay, now everybody buckle up. Here's Act 2, where we're really gonna get into some fun ghost stuff, and we're gonna see
the effects are top notch.
Yeah, like the scene with them coming down the stairs, or oh my god, like JoBeth Williams, like crying out, like, she went through my soul, that kind of stuff. And you're like, man, like, this is the way to do a haunted movie.
That's
This is a
also
haunted
like
house.
playing the line. Like for me, like when I like, because they're like, oh, that's a little cheesy, but if you're 100% invested, it'll hit you in the right spot. If you're a little tuned out, you might be like a little jaded.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that's going to play back and forth. There's no denying, like, it's still good. It's very well done. But the one thing is crazy when that thing comes out of the wall and the whole big hole tunnel in the wall and they're pulling through. That stuff is so culturally relevant that like the Simpsons would rip it off. And I don't think people register how much impact movies had back then. Everything is so disposable now. And I'm like, get off my lawn mode right now. But everything is very disposable. In 1990, if I were to walk up somebody and say, they're here, they would know it's Poltergeist. Some middle-aged guy, don't watch movies, doesn't know his fucking ass from a hole in the ground, and be like, yeah, it's Poltergeist. That's that little girl. Now, if I walk up and say they're here, somebody's going to be like, who's here? Get out of here. Go away. Leave me alone. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's so different. If I would have said I ain't afraid of no ghost or something, people are like, oh, yeah, Ghostbusters. I don't know how everything just fades out of society. People aren't interested in cinema anymore. I guess they don't need it. They're creating their own art. They're watching TikTok. They're watching short things. Everybody has the most entertaining thing in their hand. They can watch whatever they want. But it's very bizarre how these old cultural relevant movies still remain relevant to a small group of people that will know it through, but a lot of people don't. But more so than anything else that comes out now.
Yeah, interestingly, because I work around adolescents, like legally, it's all on the open up.
Yeah,
but I would, so when I'm, a lot of times we get in conversations about like movies and media and stuff like that, and it is interesting to hear their perspective on it, because some people really love movies, some people are like, movies are just like background to whatever else they're doing, but you do run into cinephiles. Like there are still those people. Just recently, we were kind of doing a meet and greet with the kids, and I was asking, I always make a joke about like, hey, what's your favorite holiday? And by the way, there is a right answer, and it's Halloween. But one of the kids said, oh, that's my favorite movie. And of course I think, well, he's probably talking about the Rob Zombie movie. And sure enough, man, this, 14-year-old kid was like, no, the John Carpenter 1978 Halloween
good kid
is one of the best movies I've ever seen. And I was like, all right, there is hope for this generation,
That's why you should have doubled down on him. Like, how many times did he shoot him?
What I did instead was I said, the John Carpenter one, and he said, yeah. I said, produced by Deborah Hill? And he said, I guess. I was like, the one that it says it's in Illinois, shot in California. I've never seen that one.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I like, look, I'll take a dad joke in a heartbeat. But yeah. So there is that contingent, but I think in the same way that, you talk about like getting the 4K of Poltergeist, which is an incredible disc, but it's going to be boutique stuff. Like you and I will have the 4K of Poltergeist, and 99.9% of the population would think that was crazy, But I think that kind of media will go on, and I think there are people in every generation that are going to latch on to that stuff and discover that stuff, whether it's cultural osmosis or whatever. But things like, Jaws and this and Halloween, like those will live on because there are enough people to kind of drag it into the culture over and over. And kids are really big right now on horror teams. Just like everywhere I look, it's a lot of Child's Play, a lot of Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Candyman, that kind of stuff. Like that old 80s and early 90s horror stuff it's still with us. They don't really understand it all, but they wear it.
You got to start gatekeeping them. Name 5 actors in it. I hate.
I am kind of a dick about it. In fairness, when I see a kid wearing like a Nightmare on Elm Street shirt, I'm like, which one is your favorite? Oh, I just gotta have the shirt. And I'm like, get out of this class.
F. Just
yes. you were failing this class until you can properly tell me why was why was Freddy Krueger killed? then you can come back into this classroom.
I'm like, let's see Wes Craven answer that question. He'd be like, well, the dreams are. It's like, I always made a joke about the science of Freddy Krueger. It's literally, if you to movie to movies, it's complete nonsense. But
Sure.
it's in the dream world, so they get away with it. It's like religion or like the Force. They can just kind of talk their way out of it. That's how the Force works. What works? I don't understand. That's how it works. You have to have faith. Well, I don't know what's going on. The science of Freddy Krueger. I want to write a book. It would be complete bullshit. It'd be like that.
Yeah.
What's the documentary about The Shining, Room 237, where they just a bunch of crazy people just talking, and they're like, we can make a movie out of it. I turned that off. I was like, this seems exploitative for real. I watch this.
I found it really fascinating as a movie in the sense that, I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I do think that you were plucking crazy people, from the online ether and just being like, now what crazy theory do you have about this and why? But there is something about doing the head fake in that documentary of like, oh, we're doing a documentary about The Shining, but no, it's not what you think. It's just a movie about people who are obsessed with The Shining to an unhealthy degree.
Yeah.
I respect that as kind of a prank almost on the viewing public. But it continues to fascinate me, to your point, that there are some things that fall by the wayside culturally, and some things that just continue to live on. But weirdly, it's the things you would think would live on. It's not a lot of surprises. Like, nobody's coming up to me and being like, what's really good? Robert Forster and Alligator is fantastic. It's like that movie's kind of. I mean, yes.
But it's a B movie.
Oh, it's so good.
It's a great movie, but it's a B movie. I mean, it's not the A movie. It's a ripoff of an A movie.
It's
done it as best as it can, and we appreciate it. But it's a cult movie. It's the cult movie through and through.
Yes. And yeah, I enjoy seeing that kind of stuff that kind of bubbles back up in Gen Z culture.
Only the real weird kids like Alligator. Like, I was the weirdo kid who was like, you ever seen Bloodletting? And they're like, are you in therapy yet, kid?
I always love it when they're surprised when they're like, how do you know the Smiths? I'm like, how do you know the Smiths? What?
Yeah, I know who Paul Morrissey is.
Yes. Not getting one over on me, kids.
Paul Morrissey. Wait, it's Paul Morrissey. It's the first name's not Paul. Paul Morrissey's the director. Morrissey's I don't know his first name. It's just Morrissey. I don't Paul Morrissey's the director.
Yeah. What is Morrissey's first name? Is it
probably not even his real name, anyways?
Reg.
Vegan Morrissey is what I'll call him from now on. The Big Veg.
Yeah.
That's all I know about the guy personally. I like his songs, but I don't know. He's a vegan.
Yeah. Inscrutable.
So basically, we'll talk. I want to talk a little bit about Zelda Rubinstein. We really didn't give her the love. I mean, she's perfect in this movie. And I love when she enters the frame. She's talking at first, walks up the stairs, and Craig T. Nelson's like in front of the camera. I don't know if it's a split diopter shot or not, but he's in focus. He's in the front, and she's walking around the back, and he's just like, this lady. Even after all the crazy shit that happens, Zelda Rubinstein's such an offbeat character and actress. She walks in, and he's like, what is this bullshit? It's almost comical. She definitely has a comical presence about her, but super memorable, never crosses the line to the point where it ruins the grounded feel of the movie. But yeah, she's super memorable, very funny, obviously, for a reason they kept bringing her back, and Heather O'Rourke for the 2 sequels.
The thing that's fun about that character, I mean, we keep talking about how like there are these two sides of Poltergeist, of like the kind of happy-go-lucky Spielberg side and the Hooper side. I think that's true of the characters as well. Like, Zelda Rubinstein is played a little bit for comic relief for sure.
Yeah.
But there's also those moments where she kind of gets real with them, and it's like, oh, okay, well, no, I'm paying attention because you're being serious. How does she put it? Like, are you willing to do things that fly in the face of common sense and your like everything you've ever held dear? It's like, hey, are you willing to give up every moral code you've ever had and fly in the face of whatever religious beliefs you may have had to do this crazy thing? And she pulls it off, like she is alternately really fun and funny, like, the scene you talked about with her getting one over on Craig T. Nelson, or even just her announcing this house is clean with her hair all crazy, and all that stuff. It's great, but she can kind of bring the gravitas when she needs it, because she's also explaining the movie of like, here's what you have to do to go rescue your daughter. But even that is like, I love the line where she's like, you've got to go into there with this rope and grab your little girl, and Craig T. Nelson is like, no, I'm gonna do it. She's like, you can't go, you've never done this. He's like, well, neither of you. You're right. All right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
She comes in little oldie, big authority, because she's so small and tiny, but she just commands like screen presence.
Yeah.
I definitely have to. I love spotting Sonny Landham in there being a pervert, along with what is his name? LG from Texas Chainsaw 2 is the other guy, and he sneaks the chili. That's such a little touch. He's like, good coffee. You make good coffee. It's like right when I see him, immediately Texas Chainsaw 2. LG. He's very funny in this too. Just small little characters like that. And my favorite actor in the movie has got to be James Karen. Always James Karen. And he's so good at this. He's such a good slime ball. Oh, and he's perfect. He's like, yeah, we moved him to a nicer neighborhood. And this movie, I don't know why. It's probably because of skeletons and James Karen, and he's involved with skeletons in both movies. But it reminds me of Return of the Living Dead. Tobe Hooper was supposed to direct that, so there is similarities, and that's like my second favorite movie ever made. So like, I just love James Karen in this. I love Craig T. Nelson grabs him, and he's just such a slimy little bastard too. He's like, oh, nice bay window right there. He's just good. He's perfect.
He's 100%. He's fantastic in it. Also, the Craig T. Nelson math that he does when he's like, oh, we moved all the way, it's 15 minutes down the road, it's no big deal. And when Craig T. Nelson's like, yeah, I guess that'd be okay. Like, all right, maybe that's not enough to cause a haunting. And James Karen be like, what are you talking about? Who would care about that? Well, whoever would care. I would just make it.
He's all distraught with these giant bags under his eyes.
Yeah.
Because he starts off so, jovial and fun, and then by the end of it, he's a maniac.
Well, and the fun part of all that too is that like James Karen's read of it is, oh, my top salesman is getting poached or wants to go to another. Yeah. So my solution to this is just to bribe him
with a house.
With this house that we're gonna build on another cemetery.
Where are they at? Who has all these dead bodies just lying around?
I mean, I assume it's the town from Murder, She Wrote, and this is just where all the bodies have gone.
The one thing I should mention is this movie did spawn 2 sequels and a remake, and the remake is horrible. We've already kind of figured that. And I tried to be fair, but I was just like, I hate this. I hate everything about this. I was just watching it and I was getting mad. I was just like, the sound mix is good. And some of the digital effects were pretty cool, but you have to add in the fucking drone. I was like, everything that's brand new, they're like, we'll add this in. You dated that movie before it hit theaters.
Yeah, I mean, the technical part of it, I don't disagree with you. It's just like in the grand scheme of that movie's problems, it's tough, man, to figure out what's the worst of it. Like technically, it's mostly fine, but man, that it does just get everything wrong about what makes Poltergeist an interesting and cool movie.
The clown was such an afterthought in the remake, and the clown in the original is terrifying. That damn clown scared the shit out of me, and they even ripped it off in Ghoulies. Isn't there like a plaster? It's a clown that breaks out as a little slimy monster. It's just like, you can't help yourself, can you, Charlie Band?
And I mean, there's a guy who never saw a movie that he couldn't rip off.
With boobs in it.
Yeah, and I mean, that is not a criticism.
No, I love Charlie
Band.
I watched all his movies growing up. How can I hate the guy?
Yeah. I mean, I still look. There are times when, only subspecies will do, except no substitutes.
I'll take number 2, Bloodstone, or 3. Those are the ones I like. I like 2 and 3.
Yeah. Did you see the most recent one?
No, I haven't watched 4 yet. I've seen Vampire Journals, but I haven't seen part 4, and I have 5 sitting here as well. I'm waiting to watch.
I'll tell you, the most recent one, it Anders Hove is not a young man, and
Less makeup.
The makeup is fine. The voice is a little rough.
Yeah.
That's a guy who hasn't skipped a cigarette very often.
He's like that guy in Beetlejuice. He's like, I'm trying to cut back.
Kinda, yeah. It's not that far off. Like when hi, I'm Radu, and you're like, whoa, are you?
Says who?
But it's not bad. It's actually a pretty good subspecies movie. And it actually gives Radu like a great deal of pathos. I found myself kind of feeling sorry for him.
That's a pretty good series from what I've seen. I've seen 4 out of the 6, so I'm like, these are pretty good.
Vampire Journals is the low water mark, if you ask me.
It's like Bad Interview with the Vampire. It's like Bad Interview, Brian.
Yeah, and 4 is not great. 4 has some problems, but I really felt like 5 was a real uptick. Like I was prepared to just think, 5 is just a cash in, and maybe it was, but Ted Nicolau, I think, is the guy who does the subspecies movies.
Yeah, and he worked on Texas Chainsaw, didn't he?
I believe that's right.
I believe he did. Back to Hooper.
Well, here's some crossover, so this isn't total nonsense. But yeah. It like he kind of brought his A game. It's a pretty good story. It does call back to Vampire Journals, which should not be a reason to watch Vampire Journals, but if you're gonna do all of them, then just do all of them.
Yeah.
It's just keep in mind Vampire Journals and 4 are gonna be like 4 is fun. 4 is cheap, but it's real campy and silly in a way I can get behind.
Oh, you know what sequel I can't get behind?
Yeah.
Poltergeist 2.
A lot of people love that movie. I ain't one.
I hate it. I hate it.
Sucks.
I used to like it as a kid, kind of. And now once I rewatch it, there's one thing that I just cringe at, and it's the Native American stereotype. I love Native American characters, like in movies when they're done well. Like Chief from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's one of my all-time favorite movies. One of my all-time favorite books.
Same
one of my
actor,
all-time
right?
favorite
Isn't it
books. Will Sampson. Yeah, great actor. He's good in everything. He's fine in Poltergeist 2, but terrible movie, terrible film. The special effects are amazing. The giant puke worm's cool, but the dog dies immediately. The grandma dies. They've introduced her, and then 5 minutes later she dies. I'm like, what are we doing here? And they try to do a Spielberg thing. It's embarrassing.
It's real bad. It's a really, really bad. And Poltergeist 3 is worse than that.
I don't think so. I have some love for 3. Nostalgia plays heavy on Poltergeist 3 for me, and I like the director a lot, and I love the mirror tricks.
Yeah. I need to go back and revisit because I saw it one time and I thought it was.
I'm not trying to sell you on it because I haven't watched the movie in 20 years. So
okay.
I'm going off a 20-year memory here. So like 16-year-old me or something, 17-year-old me is like, I like this, and I watched it 100 times as a kid. If I watch it now, I'll probably be a little harsher, but there is some affinity for it. It's a little bit, and it has the tower thing that's cool.
Yeah, and it's Tom Skerritt. I like Tom Skerritt.
He's great, and Nancy Allen too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's great. She's an underrated actress for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't, it's like Brian De Palma's girl, and she should have been in every fucking movie ever made.
She's amazing in Dressed to Kill.
Yeah, and she's also great in. She's great in Dressed to Kill. She's not as good in Blowout, but she's great in Dressed to Kill.
Yeah,
her character's not as well written. That's the problem.
That is the problem.
And she's great in RoboCop too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great actress. So Poltergeist 3 I like better, but I haven't seen it. 2 I watched within the last 5 years, and I just was like, I can't. The guy who plays Julian Beck Kane, he's really scary, but a dying man can be scary. But yeah, it's just I just do not like the movie at all, and I don't. And I'm like Craig T. Nelson. I'm surprised he's fucking in it.
Yeah. It's just so clearly a cash grab. It's just Poltergeist was popular, so we need to make another one of these. Like, that was not a movie that anyone wanted to make because somebody had a great idea for Poltergeist 2.
And it's 86 as well, so.
Yeah,
great special effects, though. That was special effects heyday. It was the crazy mid-80s. Had the wildest effects you can imagine.
Yeah, and I remember the mass grave in Poltergeist 2 being kind of like, that is pretty, gnarly. But yeah, it's a bad movie.
Nothing compares to the skeletons in the pool. I love that scene. In the original where they fall in and the skeletons are all over. That's just great stuff.
Dude, I mean, the coffins like just flying up out of the ground.
Yeah.
The problem I have with Poltergeist, the one and only problem I really have with Poltergeist, is once you get out of the pool, and you save Heather O'Rourke, the movie needs to be done.
Yeah, it goes on for like 10 more minutes.
Yeah, and again, I love JoBeth Williams, but I think the whole sequence of like her in the bath and stuff, even though we're doing the cool like ceiling effects and her getting thrown around and all that, like all of it's cool in principle, but it feels like once we save Carol Ann, the movie's done. And then everything that kind of happens after that is a little bit tacked on. It's not bad. And like you said, like once we have coffins blowing up through the ground and her sliding into a pool of skeletons, like that stuff is amazing, and the house collapsing in on itself is still a really good effect.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
James Cameron freaking out, like all of that stuff is really good. It just feels like an ellipsis after the rest of the movie. And maybe that's more my fault than the movie's fault, where I'm just like, as soon as they've got Carol Ann dried off and they're packing things up, I'm like, all right, everybody, we're going. And then...
Yeah, like, I got to take a piss. And then they're like, this is still going on? What are we doing here?
Right. As soon as it's like, oh, I'm going to go into the bath and color my hair, it's like, oh, okay. All right. We're back in it. Okay, gotcha. And I think she's good. Like, JoBeth Williams was like an early crush of mine because of this movie, I think. Because I was just like, wow, she's a middle-aged woman, and she's super attractive. Although I'm not sure how old she was when she did this. She was probably 25.
Yeah, I know. That's the 80s. Everybody's like, Craig T. Nelson was like 17.
Yeah. But yeah. So, it was easy to kind of get a crush on JoBeth Williams, despite her talking about coloring her hair, even though it was like 11. Because I just do think that the level of acting that she brings to this movie is out of this world. I think she's uncommonly good in this.
She's very good, and she's also got that quality where you definitely want to marry JoBeth Williams.
Yeah, she just seems like, and this is going back to my love of the movie Teachers also, where she features prominently. But she always comes across as like, you seem nice. You just seem like a nice person. I mean, she's very attractive, of course, but she just seems very nice.
That's Karen Allen for me.
Yeah, that too. I mean, the kind of birds of a feather, really.
When I see her in Cruising, all I can do is worry about her because I'm like, don't go with that Lachino. He's probably a killer.
Yeah, none of this is going to end well for you.
I just always like, just leave him.
there was kind of the brunette trifecta, really. That's like JoBeth Williams, Brooke Adams, and Karen Allen.
I like Brooke Adams too. She's got that look from she's in Shockwaves and Invasion of the Body Snatcher '78. Right? Yeah, Dead Zone.
Yeah,
all three of them. I will marry you guys if you're single. If you're looking for somebody. 37, look 50. We won't look too awkward. We look about the same age.
Man, talk about tangents on top of tangents. You know who Brooke Adams is married to, right?
I think I've heard it before, but is it Jeff Goldblum? Just guess.
No. I mean, it should be. Everybody should be married to Jeff Goldblum. No, it's Tony Shalhoub, Monk himself.
Really?
Yeah.
He's batting. He's batting higher. He's out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He married up. Yeah.
He married up for sure. I guess what else should we talk about in Poltergeist before we get out of here? I think I hit all my notes. Love the character actors, love the nuances, love the score.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Go ahead. I was just going to say we should talk about the curse.
Oh, well, before we hit that, one thing I wanted to mention, or just to ask you, because it's a question I've asked myself a number of times over the years. When the big demon comes out, like when Craig T. Nelson yanks, is that supposed to be the straight up devil? Is that what the movie is kind of leading us to? Because they refer to him as the Beast.
I really never registered what that was. I never thought of it. All the times I watched it, because I don't, I don't imagine a poltergeist a devil. Like I don't imagine Beetlejuice a devil. You know what I mean? It's a poltergeist. They call him the Beast, though.
Yeah.
I guess it would be Kane in the sequels, right?
Yeah.
But you can't take the sequels. You can't take the sequels. That's like when people are like watching Predator, and they're like, then like, you know what I mean? They're like, well, in Predator 2 and 3, he's 10 times strong. I'm like, well, the first one he got killed by some guy with some mud on him, so I don't know how it's tough. You know what I mean? They're like, all those are fan fiction as far as I'm concerned when I'm talking generally about the first film.
Yes.
So I don't know. I have no idea. This is a good question. I want to say no because, but then again, Spielberg's very religious, I bet, writing the story. But at the same time, he probably left it kind of up in the air. Kind of like how John Wayne was religious, but he never was ever religious in a movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think, anytime I think of John Wayne now, I always think of the line from The Birdcage. Like, I just never realized how gay John Wayne's walk was before.
I don't remember that line, but it's a good line.
Yeah, that's why he's teaching him to walk more masculine. He's like, walk like John Wayne, and he does. He's like, yeah, that you're walking like John Wayne.
He's got that bow leg thing. He's like tall, and he's got those lips in his boots and shit. He's all fucked up for riding horses and drinking beer and eating 40 steaks a night.
Steaks, yeah. But yeah, so I've always wondered about the devil thing, just because I don't. You're right. It doesn't feel directly religious that something like The Exorcist does. But then when you start talking about the beast, I'm like, that codes as the devil to me.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know what? I was talking about this thinking, and we brought up the religious propaganda films. So when I was going through 1980 and 81, so I'm watching everything. I'm watching like over 100, 200 movies for each year. So I'm getting down to the nitty gritty. I'm watching movies that are listed as horror that are just like Taiwan fantasy movies. You know what I mean? Right. Like, this isn't a horror movie. This is just a guy who turned into a goat and did backflips for an hour. But I watched 2 hours of it. Like, I'm not a better person for it. But,
I don't know about 2 hours of it, but it sounds okay.
I mean, I made that up, but there are movies like it. I'm not like thrilling bloody sword, but I came across these couple of movies that were just essentially religious propaganda, like Rhythma. One was Years of the Beast, and I can't remember the other one. Something, and they were in 81, and they were the same movie. They're both about the rapture, and I watched both of them, and I was just like, those weren't that bad. I kind of enjoyed them because. They do not lie what they are. Right in the bat, they're like, this is about we're coming from a religious side. So, well, a lot of the other movies like The Exorcism, Emily Rose, or something like The Conjuring, they're coming in there like this. And at the end, like, by the way, like you watch it, it'd be like talking to somebody, best friends with them. Then they're like, have I told you about my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ? And they hand you a Jehovah Witness pamphlet. You got me, you son of a bitch. You got me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just come up front and tell me what you're about. Those movies did. And I liked them for it. These other ones nowadays, they just and they just kind of sneak it in there. While stuff like Omen and they don't feel like, do you know what they are? Or Poltergeist, I don't feel like it's preaching to me. It's just like, I'm not a super religious guy, but if you tell me my daughter's been sucked in a portal from a monster or a beast or something, I'm jumping in there. I'm gonna be a pretty quick believer. Okay. Yeah.
Like you have to square that circle, because otherwise, like that is the only option. And to me, that's kind of like I said, on the rewatch, that's the thing I probably took away more than anything, is like, this is such a movie just about parents trying to save the child. And the Poltergeist is a stand-in for anything. Like, it could be childhood leukemia or anything like that. And it's just like, how do you, as a family, how do you deal with this? It's interesting. And in a weird way, it's more akin to Poltergeist or to The Exorcist than I ever gave it credit for, because they kind of travel along similar themes. The Exorcist is way more raw about it, more real, which is weird to say about a movie about a child getting possessed. It's like, but it's real, it's gritty.
It's nasty. I mean, there's some crucifixion stuff going on where you're just like, well, who put this in here?
Yeah, and it plays more like 70s cinema. Because it was, but it plays more like 70s cinema than the kind of glossy 80s cinema Poltergeist, for sure.
Well, Children in Peril automatically appeals to children, except 70s cinema. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like Poltergeist, Exorcist isn't, but Poltergeist does, The Gate does, and then most of them are aimed at kids, like The Monster Squad. Lost Boys might have an R rating, but that's a kid's movie. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, at least an adolescent movie.
Oh yeah, 14 years old should be watching.
Right. 14 is about the 13, 14 is like, you should be watching The Lost Boys.
Yeah, for sure. Overall, I really enjoyed Poltergeist this time around. I mean, it's definitely got a spot in my top 10. I'm going to be watching like 180 movies. It's going to make the top 10. You know, it's gotta. And it's a very competitive year, though.
What's if you had to put together like 2 or 3 in no particular order in the series so far? Where are you?
I mean, I've seen most of the movies from this year, but I'm at like 91, 92 watches so far. But we're looking at the ones I haven't rewatched in general. But like, I mean, The Things this year, Creep Shows this year, Tenebrae, Poltergeist, Basket Case, New York Ripper, all sorts of crazy stuff. And then you got your oddball titles you really like Living Dead Girl was one that I always kind of had a fondness of. And you got the oddball ones. What else is there? Slumber Party Massacre is a popular one. Halloween 3, Friday 3. It's a strong year. It's very
kind of a stacked year. Yeah.
Yeah. You got at least a 10. You got 10 movies in your top 10 that are like 9s or higher.
Yeah. I mean,
the all-time favorites.
Yeah.
You can't. Unfuckable with. You can't fuck with The Thing.
Any year that contains The Thing is immediately one of the best years in horror.
That'd be my vote. Like, personal favorites aside, even though The Thing is one of my personal favorites, I'd be like, I'll put this one up for the best. Like, if somebody say that's the best horror movie, I'm like, I'm not arguing. I'll be like, no comment. So I can't argue.
You mentioned the curse, and I haven't thought about the curse of Poltergeist outside of Heather O'Rourke.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's the big one who died during the filming of Poltergeist 3.
Yeah. The oldest daughter in the first one, she was strangled by her boyfriend, who was much older, and the guy basically got away with it. He got a slap on the wrist, and he already had long-term abuse from another girl. That's just disgusting. I mean, if I'm a dad in that situation, I'm taking him out. I'm giving him, what was that one? I don't advocate that kind of shit, but I'm not going to be thinking correctly in that kind of situation. You go nuts.
Right.
You go nuts. That's your job as a dad. It's a good thing I don't have kids, because I'd be an unhinged parent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, right. That's the reason why you do not let the parents of murdered children decide the fates of murderers, is because it's just death. The worst death you can think of immediately.
Just bury him alive. What? Don't even waste the bullet. No coffin.
Right.
We'll be all right.
Well, we're gonna go totally the vanishing on this dude, and
give him a 7 treatment. Which one does he want? All 7 sins at the same time.
Which one? Yes, all of them.
I feel bad for the poor bastard who's got to have sex with him with a knife after he's had gluttony.
It's got to be at the same time. You know. Like feeding it SpaghettiOs while
somebody's taking his guts and throwing them on a scale. Get some of this on that scale right there.
Right. Poor guy. Did he put it on me?
That's a nasty movie too.
7 is far and away in my mind David Fincher at his meanest. Yeah.
It's not a good movie about human beings. It's not positive on that.
No.
So
but did anyone else go? Like, what is it? Just the two?
Zelda Rubinstein's mom passed while they're making the third one. She's probably like in her 90s. Will Sampson died like 2 years after the second movie. I mean, he wasn't super old, but Julian Beck died after the second one, very shortly after. So they're trying to shoehorn things. Like Craig T. Nelson's career was over. Motherfucker was in Coach for like ever, made millions of dollars. And can we not forget Action Jackson? Mm-hmm.
I would never will.
His death scene's one of the funniest things ever. When Craig T. Nelson, he goes, me and my friends rewound that because it's in slow motion, and then we put it in slow motion on top of that. It was tear-inducing. I don't know why. We were very stupid, but he was like, I and they had this documentary, Cursed Films, on Shudder. So I was like, I'll give this a spin. I haven't watched any of these, and I won't be watching the rest after that. Do you ever have a 45-minute show you got to fill in and you got 10 minutes of information?
Oh, for sure.
That's what it was. It's bad.
I used to really like, God, it was one of those like, hey, we're going to go to spooky places and check them out. Like Josh Gates was the host.
Yeah.
Like, one of those.
Ghost Watchers, Ghost Event, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, that's another one where like, this could be 12 entertaining minutes. and instead it is 48 unendurable ones.
For sure. They just don't get to a point. They're like talking about all these things. Like, yes, and Gary Sherman's on there, who directed 3. And if you ever heard an interview with him talk about this, that's all you need to hear. He's just direct and upfront. He's like, and he doesn't play into this. And there's another guy comes on there and he's like, the idea that they're saying that they use real skeletons in Poltergeist and that's what caused the curse is pure nonsense. They've been using real skeletons for years in movies, and that's just complete bullshit. You know what I mean? And I was like, thank you for those two, but the rest of it just seems like straight garbage. Nobody involved with it. Like, that was involved with the movies, and it's just trash. It's not. It's just. I know that they probably want to talk about it because it's such a popular subject, but it's just not. And they have seasons they have to fill, but that's just. There's not enough information about it. There's the girl being strangled and then Heather Burke dying, and that's not really that interesting.
Right, and
it's sad, but it's not interesting.
Sure, yeah, it's an unfortunate coincidence to be sure.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's it. Yeah. I saw that stuff, and I just don't buy into the cursed movie. Like, if you told me, hey, here's a cursed movie where if you watch it, you go crazy or something, I'm all about that. But, like, a curse in the sense of, like, well, everyone who made this, has suffered some unfortunate fate, other than, what was that, Genghis Khan, the Conqueror movie?
John Wayne, everybody got cancer.
Right. Like, that's a cursed movie.
John Wayne was already getting cancer. The guy smoked like a goddamn chimney, but hey.
Right. When they brought back the radioactive sand to the studio to shoot some stuff, and it's like, all right, well, that shaved the 25 years off everybody's life.
Worth it.
I didn't see the movie.
I heard it's pretty terrible.
I've only seen about half of it, and what I saw of it was utter trash, and all the more sad because people actually had their lives cut drastically short to make this movie that is completely forgettable.
And
other than that,
a bunch of talented people too, right? Mm-hmm. John Ford directed that.
Yeah.
That's sad. I mean,
somebody.
Was it Ford? It was. I don't might not have been Ford, but John Wayne at the time was such an excellent. I love John Wayne movies. I'm not talking about. I don't know the dude personally. Don't give a shit. It's 1940 Dickety 3 or whatever. You know what I mean? But he was the biggest actor at the time, and he has got an amazing screen presence. You know.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he was a movie star back in the time. Yeah, this is getting into old man territory, but yeah, from a time when you had like a half dozen to a dozen honest to goodness movie stars that you went to the movies because Paul Newman was in it, Didn't matter what it was about. Like, what's this one about? He's skiing? Okay. I'll watch Paul Newman ski for a little bit.
That's like that movie where they made about the guys making the Nike shoe Air Jordans. And I saw that commercial. I was like, people are going there for shoes now. Seeing a movie about shoes. I sound like Norm Macdonald. Like, I go in there, right? Check this out. Shoes. It's such a I would never see that movie. But and then they made that in the 90s. I would have somehow seen it. I guarantee it. I would have watched it and not gave a shit. Now I'm like, I want to watch Shoes, bro.
I gotta tell you, I saw it. Pretty good.
It's probably all right. I guarantee it's fine. I'm like, that's probably a 6.5, 7-star movie out of 10.
Yeah. I couldn't care less about Air Jordans, but sure enough, the movie itself, not bad. But there's been that weird rush of movies where like Blackberry, all about the rise and fall of Blackberry, and one was about Tetris, and all these things from the 80s. They're just like, hey, you want to know how this thing got made?
Not really. Yeah, but it's hot outside and it's a matinee. I'll go in.
Yeah, it's like the Robert Forster line from Jackie Brown, like whatever's playing soon and looks good.
Yeah. That's the weird thing here is like they're not selling movies with actors anymore. They're selling movies with how something got made. Like, I like shoes. I love Air Jordans. I'll go and check this movie out. And then somebody can drop some knowledge about their Air Jordans, how they got made.
Yeah.
No, this is not a second edition Air Jordan. Okay.
I get real frustrated with the general lack of any kind of creativity in most mainstream films. It bums me out and I mean, it's always been like this to a degree, but there was always like the prestige movies too that would come out, and those have all just been dumped on streaming in a way that you never hear about them, and they never unless one's really good, it never really catches any attention. And so it's just kind of all the mediocre stuff that we've always had, without any of the big highs.
And when you go through like years like the 80s, like I can watch every horror movie from 1980 like in under 200 movies, pretty much get them all unless they're not available. So like you could see everything, and there's going to be like 5 movies that are just unwatchable. You're just like, oh, I want to die right now. Nowadays, there are so many movies that are just unwatchable. A ridiculous amount of unwatchable movies. So like, I'm not going to do the 2000s. I'm not doing it. I'll do 2000 all the way 1900 to 2000 for horror movies. I'll watch every single one of them. But I'm not once we get past that 2000 threshold, there's just too much. I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean that feels reasonable. I mean that's a century of film, and
that's 100. All the best horror movies were made there. After that, you got to start going to Japan and different countries and start digging into like the underground stuff. And there's too much underground stuff. There's a lot of gems there. I'll just have to be very picky with what I dig and find. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my own pet project these days has been ranking every horror movie ever. And,
is The Haunting at number 1 right now?
Yes. Hold on. I'll have to double check, but I do believe, in fact, The Haunting is still at number 1.
Biggest blind spot for me is The Haunting. I've never seen it. Isn't that horrible?
No, I mean that's not crazy because
it happens, right?
Right, and that's a movie from 1963. Like they in the not to litigate The Haunting all over again, but the thing about The Haunting that's interesting, to say the least, is that The Haunting is much more of a psychological horror film than it is a movie about a haunted house. Yeah. And once you can kind of get behind that, then it's great. Like I hate to judge it in terms of like, well, given the time it was made, because it's still interesting regardless of that. But given the time it was made, it's kind of astonishing that it's dealing with so many issues of like, undercurrents of lesbianism and whether or not the main character is mentally stable or not, and it's super fascinating and really well done and blah blah blah. But yes, it is currently topping the list. I want to pull it up real quick. Right now, the top 3 are The Haunting, The Omen at number 2, and the movie Bug from William Friedkin.
Those are all great movies, from what I know. I've not seen The Haunting one.
Yeah, and keep in mind that's with only a little over 40 movies ranked.
Yeah.
I have an enormous backlog, so I will actually be catching up on that in relatively short order. But yeah, the Haunting's tremendous, man. Like I recommend it, but also know what you're getting into, and that it is about a haunted house, but it's also kind of not.
Yeah, I mean, I like all stuff. I'm not very picky about anything. I'll give anything a try when it comes to any movie, really. Except I'm a little bit more picky with newer films, I must admit it. That's just because I'm old.
Really good Russ Hamlin in it from Twin Peaks, if you're a Twin Peaks junkie. But he's got one of cinema's great lines at the end of the movie, which I will not spoil. You should experience that for yourself.
So here's a quick game. No explanation.
Please.
No explanation. This is a ripoff from F This Movie, a very good podcast, very good show.
Yeah.
Never heard it. So better or worse, these 1982 movies. You just say which movie, Poltergeist or this movie, which you like better. No explanation, no in-depth.
Okay.
You can't say tie if you don't want to think about it too much.
Okay.
The Thing.
Thing is better.
Halloween 3.
Poltergeist is better.
Friday 3.
Poltergeist is better.
Tenebrae.
Tenebrae probably is better.
Slumber Party Massacre.
Oh, Poltergeist. I love Slumber Party Massacre, but if you, sir, are no Poltergeist.
Creepshow.
Sorry, I know I'm thinking about this because I do love Creepshow very dearly. I'm Poltergeist, but it's close.
Basket Case.
Oh, Poltergeist for sure.
Cat people.
Poltergeist. Poltergeist.
Pieces.
Oh, definitely Poltergeist. Duncan, I know loves Pieces. He's a maniac. Definitely Poltergeist.
White dog.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to pass on that one. It's been too long since I've seen White Dog, but I remember it being really good.
Very depressing.
Yeah, I like Sam Fuller. I like a good Sam Fuller.
Q, the winged serpent.
Oh, a Poltergeist, but Q almost has it for sheer audacity.
New York Ripper.
Poltergeist there.
Eating Raoul.
Ooh. Wow, that's a real apples and oranges. Poltergeist probably, but Eating Raoul is an interesting movie.
I'll just do a couple of picks here because I don't want to go down the whole list. Swamp Thing.
Definitely Poltergeist.
Entity.
Ooh, interesting. 2 investigating haunted. Poltergeist is more palatable.
Extra.
Oh, Poltergeist for sure.
Alone in the Dark.
Oh, Poltergeist, but again, that's closer than you would think.
Amityville 2, The Possession.
Oof. This is another one of those I would give it a much higher score than Amityville 2 really deserves.
Yeah.
Because Amityville 2 is one of the most outrageous movies I've ever seen in my life. And I just watched it not that long ago. Poltergeist is a better movie. No question about that. But Amityville 2, for sheer have a movie blow your mind with what it's going to do on screen.
It's weird.
For a movie to have the incest part of it be not as shocking as other things about the movie. Incest is number 3 on the list of things that are audacious about that movie.
Movie's wild. It's really weird. I only saw it the one time and I was like, this is gross. And it's the director, Damanio Damanini is an excellent director from Italy, and he doesn't direct horror movies. He directed a giallo, but he directed mostly crime thrillers and political thrillers. And you're just like, what are you doing? He's talking about classic movies with is it Lee J. Cobb and Franco Nero, and you're just like, this is an excellent movie. And then he's over here making Amityville 2, The Possession. And you're like, Burt Young's all sweaty and it looks like there's incest, and I don't want to be here.
There is a sequence where every member of that family gets gunned down, children included, in graphic detail. And then all of a sudden it's just going to be The Exorcist in the last 30 minutes. And by the way, John Prine's here?
It's Andrew Prine.
Andrew Prine, right? Andrew Prine, yeah.
From Calendar Girls, which is another real nasty fucking movie.
Yeah. I mean, Grizzly.
That's not so nasty.
I love Grizzly. I love Andrew Prine in Grizzly.
He's got the great Vietnam speech, right?
He does. And at the very beginning of the movie, he's like, hey, everybody, this is a pro-nature movie, and I'm going to tell these people I'm flying around in my helicopter all about how we got to save the trees. Everybody got that? All right, let's get on with the movie, man.
I'm more of a Richard Jekyll guy myself. I love Richard Jekyll. He's one of my favorites.
Also fantastic in a guy who gets killed only to wake up just to get killed.
I know, yes. It's like, you think he's going to make it because he's so... what's the word? He's so spry, and he's so hard to kill. All the movies he's in, he's so short and stocky. It's like, you can't kill this guy. You can't catch him.
He's the Richard Dreyfuss. That's the term that Grizzly makes, is they kill Dreyfuss.
Yeah, but he comes back. They definitely did that on purpose in Grizzly. They're like, he's dead. No, he's not, Richard Dreyfuss, but he actually is dead. Fuck you. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. Okay, now he's
thanks
really
a lot.
dead.
Yeah, I really needed that. What was the point of that? But I'm just thinking of the bazooka now from Grizzly. I'm getting way off track.
Man, look, anytime you need somebody to come talk about Grizzly, I know
you're the guy.
That, but I will do that in a heartbeat. In fact, I should have a signal light for that, because Grizzly is one of those movies that I love so dearly that they should be able to throw up the Grizzly signal and then I just appear.
That movie is bonkers.
Yeah, it's crazy, and like, as a Jaws ripoff goes, it's probably my favorite by a mile.
I think I'm Alligator. I'm an Alligator guy.
I like Alligator a lot, but I don't know, something about that. It gets blown up by a bazooka. Like,
I think it comes to, I think that alligators are just, they freak me the fuck out more.
Yeah.
Bears would scare me, but I love bears. I mean, bears are cuddly. They're cool. But
Yeah.
alligators, like, I don't know. They just, crocodiles really scare me. I go to the zoo and I stare at the
Yeah.
saltwater crocodile like this.
You know, all right,
Like
so I
20
love
minutes.
a good crocodile movie.
Yeah.
And one of the facts that I think it's in Rogue or something. One of those. What's the one with the 7-Up guy?
They're trapped on a tree, like a big tree in Rogue, and he's like circling.
Okay, so it's not Rogue. It's Blackwater, maybe.
I didn't see Blackwater, but they're both Australian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, at some point, somebody is telling the story of like, oh yeah, you have to come down to the river to wash your clothes at different times every day, because the crocs will watch you, and if you come down every day at the same time, they'll know when you're going to be there, and they'll kind of creep up and grab you. And I was like, oh, well, that's just the most horrifying thing I've ever heard.
Oh shit!
You know, like, and then I looked it up, and it's like, oh, that's true. Crocodiles are that smart. That is a real, honest to goodness crocodile fact. Well, not smart. They're just good hunters, right? Like, that's what their brain is tuned for. Is just, I will stalk and wait. And
patterns. They catch on patterns, right?
Yes. So
survival.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're just apex predators. They'll like, but yeah. So when I learned that fact, you know, crocodiles rocketed to the top of my list of things to avoid. Especially, I guess, several days in a row. You shouldn't hang out with the same crocodile for too long.
Yeah, you don't push your luck. If you make it out there 3 times, don't go back for a 4th, man. You don't need it. Last 2, I doubt. Night Beast.
Oh, I mean, Poltergeist is the better movie, but Night Beast is fun. I like Night Beast.
And The Beast Within.
Man, I find The Beast Within to be trashy in a way that I don't really like.
It's uncomfortable. I like it, but I'm trashy. Like,
I
came from like a little water community that's in Ohio. Don't understand. It's like the only fucking peninsula in like, I don't know if there's any more, but it's like this little water thing. It's like, what if we took like that New England and just made it all like rednecks? That's what I feel like it is. They're like swamp rat New England, and like it's a small little community. So I'm just like watching all these guys. I'm like, I understand this movie. I get it. Like, we had Cicada Man too.
I mean, for posterity, definitely Poltergeist. But Beast Within is it's just one of those movies that when I watch it, I feel like I should be at a drive-in.
Yeah,
and I should be real drunk.
Yeah, and then you like accidentally cheer on a rape, not knowing what's going on, and then like can't like sleep that night because you feel so bad about it.
You have to start to question yourself.
You're like, what
as a
happened?
person.
Was that a rape scene in that movie? I was cheering the whole time, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, there's 2 nasty rapes in that. Like the first one wasn't good enough. They got to come back for a second one.
And I think that's my problem with it is, I don't know. I guess I feel like unless you're doing an I Spit on Your Grave, then it's 1 rape per movie. You just don't get the second. You don't get the second bite of that apple.
Don't come back for seconds. You're just gonna lose the audience.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where it lost me. Like the first one, I'm like, yeah, I don't like it, but all right, Beast Within, I'll allow it. And then, you know, the second one happens. I'm like, oh, objection. Objection, you Cicada Man.
You're right. He's like overruled.
But yeah. But 82 is here's the thing that's interesting, you know, touching back on a previous part of the conversation, but those are all very different movies for the most part. Like, I mean, Friday 3 and some sequels in there. I mean, Amityville 2 is a sequel, but it ain't nothing like the Amityville horror.
Nor is Halloween 3.
Halloween 3 is very different. The Thing is very different from all of those. The Entity is different from that, which is also kind of different from Poltergeist in a lot of really substantial ways. really buried here. But I think that's just generally true of the 80s, where there was so much kind of experimentation.
A lot of different countries adding in too.
Yeah, and you still had the slasher, but now there was also there was still plenty of room to do really bonker stuff like Reanimator in the mix. And yeah, it's when people talk about like all you old people say the 80s were the best for horror, it's like, well, the 80s were the best for movies in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Really
Everybody knows, I
nice
think,
mix.
65 to like 95 is just like gold for the most part. I mean, in terms, I'll watch anything from those years. They're just fun, and they're also good.
And they have something to say. Like I watched the movie Joe not too long ago with Peter.
The Peter Boyle. That's an excellent movie. Director Rock.
Yeah, John Avildsen.
Yeah.
Tremendous movie, really unpleasant, but a really good movie. And to your point, it was something I'd never seen before, and I'd always kind of heard of it. And it's it's just like, oh, okay, what year was it made? 1970. Probably going to be interesting, and it was. It was great.
It's so weird, and you know what? I hate saying this because I sound like an idiot. Because when we say it's even more relevant today, it most certainly is. But the truth is, I just don't think we changed that much.
I think that's a lot of. Well, I mean, you go back to something like A Face in the Crowd with Andy Griffith.
I've heard about the movie. I've never seen it, but I know the story.
Terrific film. Elia Kazan, I think, directed it. But terrific movie, but another one of those of like, oh, okay, so it's always kind of been like this.
Yeah. And we just get more dramatic because social media. Like, it's the worst it's ever been. Is it? I don't know. It feels like it. It does feel like it, but I don't know.
I mean, the hysteria is cranked up, but the underlying events of like, yeah, I mean, every now and again you get somebody that's, just kind of a big bloviator in politics, a populist kind of bloviator.
Yeah.
It just happens, and we just happen to be in a period where there's a particularly effective one.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff is really interesting. It's, as you said, nothing's new. It's just, what is the line? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
No doubt. And talking about mass hysteria, that's when I started I always liked it, but I started more appreciating In the Mouth of Madness because mass hysteria is real. That's what that movie's about, is the mass hysteria of the populace just being all taken over by one thing. Everybody's gone nuts. Everybody's gone crazy. But then you're like, I'm not crazy. Everybody else is crazy. And then you're like, I'm fucking crazy too.
Yeah. It's one of the interesting things. And, as you and I get older, I'm probably older than you are, but as you get older as a human being, you do start to kind of mellow as you witness it. Like, there's a weird detachment that starts to happen where you're like, oh, okay, like I've seen this kind of come around before, and this is a little bit different, but it's not. There's enough that is the same that it's not totally unfamiliar.
But complacency can be dangerous. They always tell us that, but I just don't got the energy to fight it, man. I just don't. I really don't anymore.
I'm a real, I gave at the office. I pick I get out there and I vote and I, contribute and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, as a public school teacher, by the time I get home, I'm like, man, I did my bit for King and Country today. I don't have a lot left in the tank to be upset about this other thing when, I'm dealing with kids who sometimes they don't have food, sometimes they don't have some parents at home, and when you're dealing with those kind of ground level battles, at a certain point you're just like, I'm fighting in the trenches, they can fight.
It puts things in perspective big time. My parents died when I was in my late 20s, and everybody's coming up and complaining about stupid little things, and I'm just like, man, I don't care. I'm not mad, but I'm sorry, I don't want to say that. I don't give a shit. Everybody should, I hate saying this, should have a tragedy in their life that just sets them kind of straight from you kind of have to mellow out and just be do the best I can, but I'm not going to argue. When somebody younger comes up and they're so excitable, they're so mad, and this fucked up, and you're like, yeah, but I guess you just have to do what you have to do.
I don't I don't disagree with that. I you know, you don't want to wish bad things on people.
No, I don't mean it like that. But like,
no,
you
I
ever
know,
see people that are just like, you've not lived enough.
Yeah.
You're upset by these things that shouldn't matter.
Right. You talk to people sometimes and you're like, your perspective is so narrow because
Yeah.
nothing truly bad has happened to you yet.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had a kid just last year who, like, you know, had all kinds of like sickness and death in his family. And on the other side of it, I saw him recently, and I, you know, just asking how his summer was, and he was like, you know, it was good. Like, now I'm on the other side of it, and he just, you could tell that he grew up, because that's the kind of thing that makes you grow up, you know?
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, but like, I've dealt with, you know, or at least from my point of view, the optimistic me looking at that is someone got through the suffering part of it and realized there is something on the other side of the suffering, and the suffering is just a period that you have to go through. And that kind of perspective is just, it's tough to gain, and some people just, unless you've been through some shit, you don't have that perspective, and a lot of times you end up sounding like kind of an idiot when you judge other people from that perspective.
You're right. That's why you just can't. That's why you just don't. Sometimes you don't offer advice because you're like, I'm sorry. That's why I'm sorry for your loss, or I'm sorry is the best thing you can say, because you don't want to try to one up the person or make it about yourself. So that's why the term I'm sorry. And that's why Poltergeist 2 shouldn't have been made, because at the end of Poltergeist 1, we knew they got over the bad thing and they were on the other side. We're bringing it back to Poltergeist.
Yep. Kick the TV out of the hotel room.
I love that. That's a great stinger.
And we're like, hey, we're just gonna live and be happy. But I you know, again, I adore this movie. Poltergeist, I think, is it's one of my all-time favorite movies. It continues to be a source of entertainment for, like, watching it again. I got as much or more out of it as I've ever gotten, and have as good a time with it as I've ever had. I never get tired. I could watch Poltergeist once a month and I'd probably be fine.
I would love to just have kids, wait till they're like 6, and then show them Poltergeist.
I mean, it would screw up a 6-year-old. But I think
I saw it when I was 6.
I probably would have been. I would have been a little bit older. I was probably 9 or 10 by the time I saw it.
My parents probably were like, "It's Spielberg." Yeah, they probably saw it when it came out. So they're like, "You can rent it. Why not? It's PG." Because I'm over here trying to rent, like, you know, otherwise Basket Case or something. And they're like, I just get Poltergeist. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, I got in trouble eating, like, you know, hey, I want to rent a Clockwork Orange. They're like, I don't think that's right for you. I don't know. It seems pretty good.
It looks good. I appreciate you coming. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just making a jump. I like it. Look at these guys. I like their hats.
They're drinking milk, Mom. It's good for you. It's going to be okay.
They're all drinking milk. What could go wrong? This is the most wholesome movie ever.
Is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, just if you enjoyed any of these shenanigans, drop by the Dark Parade, where, you know, it's feast or famine, but and you can also get the audio versions of the ranking episodes, because I do all that live. You know, jump on a podcast, and there's usually some folks hanging out in the chat, talking our way through how to rank some of these movies. So it's a good time. Come by. The Dark Parade, available everywhere you get podcasts, and some places you don't.
Yeah, on the dark web. Yeah, it's a great show. Bo's great at what he does. I know he's also been on a little summer series. Highly recommended. That's where I met Bo. I was always glad to be on a show with him. I appreciate you doing this. I'm sorry that we just went on talking about life and all this random shit, but
I mean, don't apologize to me. This is what I love. I love hanging out, just talking movies and life, kicking around the old peanut days.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to stop this before I start talking about a bunch of random things to get myself in trouble.
This house is clean.